Live. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of HBCU The Startup. We apologize for the delay, but nonetheless, we are here, and I'm so excited because our guest today is Orlando White, a Howard alum, now LinkedIn Talent Solutions Specialist. And so I'm just so excited to have him on. And so before we get started, I'll just go ahead and clarify that the toolbar above has a 9-inch square bar, and that's where you insert your questions. So anytime you have questions, feel free to tweet them in, write them on our Facebook wall, or insert them directly into this interface. But please submit your questions. And so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Orlando, thank you for joining me this evening. We're happy to have you on. Let's start a little bit about your story. Tell us who you are, where you coming from, how'd you land at LinkedIn in the Bay Area, how'd that happen?
Totally. Well, one, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here and be speaking with all of you tonight. I'm actually a little nervous. My heart's like beating out of my chest. Just really humbled to be able to, be featured on here. It's really incredible. But yeah, so I'm originally not from California. I was born in Washington, D.C. And when I was 2 or 3 years old, I moved to Northern Virginia and spent the majority of my life there. And kind of my path to Howard and then ultimately to LinkedIn was not an easy one at all. So high school was really tough for me. So bad, in fact, that my graduating GPA was horrible. And I was a legacy at Howard. So I had, about 9 or 10 people in my family that had gone and graduated from there. And so I had an opportunity to go there myself, luckily, because I think my GPA alone, I would not have gotten in. I mean, it's like so low. And I told my mom I was going to send her this after I finished after the presentation. It's so low that I won't even say how low it was. I don't even think she knows. And so it was really bad. And so when I went to Howard, it was one of those moments where it was just like, wow. It was actually the first time. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, but it was the first time for me that I had been around so many incredible people of color, and I knew that every class and every course was taught or taken by a person of color. And for me, growing up and not really seeing those examples, even though I had two great parents, grew up in a great neighborhood, but really never being able to see those examples of Black excellence on a day-to-day basis, and then going to college and having that experience was incredible. And so, funny enough, LinkedIn actually came to Howard my senior year for the very first time to recruit Black students.
Okay.
Um, our diversity numbers were terrible and aren't the best still. And so they came to Howard. They sent me a note through LinkedIn saying that they think I'd be a good fit for the program and for the company. And so I interviewed and was luckily accepted. And I've been here now about a year and some change.
Awesome.
So it's
Awesome.
been a great experience. Absolutely.
Cool. And so you alluded to this briefly, but I'm wondering, how that experience, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't like a business major or anything like that. But how your Howard experience kind of prepared you for the work that you're doing now.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can speak to what the work that you do specifically at LinkedIn now. How did that prepare you for that?
Totally. Well, one, I would say that Howard was instrumental in me getting here um, for a myriad of reasons. I think the biggest being that there are so few people of color in tech companies,
Yeah.
period, and it's unfortunate. And being in that space where I was just constantly surrounded by Black excellence actually helped reaffirm my place
Mhm.
in this company now that I'm in very few, spaces where there are people of color. It's just like Howard for me really grounded me in my Blackness and made me proud of who I am. It taught me to celebrate the fact that, I have rich ancestry and a rich history, and that, I love storytelling and I love helping my community, and I love, I'm a full person, and Howard taught me to fall in love with that person, in a sense. And so being here and coming to LinkedIn, I think, it was incredible preparation to really stand true and firm within myself. Um, and to also be proud of who I am, right?
Right on.
And to learn and understand that like the personal and the professional are not separate, and that we are full people and shouldn't have to lose ourselves when we come to work every day. And how it really armed me and allowed me to really celebrate who I am in a really cool and authentic way. As far as what I do on a day-to-day basis, I actually work. So LinkedIn is essentially a huge database of resumes. Um, and so with that database, we actually sell that information to companies, businesses, organizations, nonprofits, school districts. So when they're looking to hire someone with this particular skill set or a certain level of qualifications, we can actually help them find the best person for the job using our tools. That's how I was found. That's how millions of people are found, to have great jobs and kind of begin great careers every day. And so, yeah, I sell that to other companies, other businesses.
Cool, awesome.
Yeah.
And so
And I
I'm
wasn't even,
wondering, and not to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, because LinkedIn intentionally came out to Howard to recruit folks. I'm wondering, because a lot of companies are beginning now to have their eyes on HBCUs. And so I think it's a two-part question. Like, so what can students who are at the various HBCU campuses do to prepare themselves for these companies who are coming on their campus?
yeah,
And on the flip side, for the companies who are coming on campus, what would you say is the best way to interact, right? Is it enough to just simply go to the Career Center? Like, what are the best ways to interact with students when they're coming on these campuses?
totally, totally. That's a great question. So one, I would say, and I didn't address your previous question of like being a political science major and all that, and I can touch on that a little bit
Oh,
more.
yeah, we should talk about that too, because that's important. That's what I appreciate the most about your stories, because it's also important. In addition to acknowledging the technical roles and being an engineer, there's also space for non-technical folks. And I think you're awesome example doing awesome work for
Thank
an
you.
incredible company, right?
Thank you. Yeah. So it's I was watching your a couple of your other videos from the web series and saw that and someone actually said a really cool data point being that 30% of only 30% of positions at tech companies are tech related, right? So people that do engineering and coding and do all that types of stuff, percent of the company, and 70%, however, is made up of people that are in sales, that work on our legal team, that work with community outreach, that do user experience. I mean, it's so many different roles that are available within tech, and being able to kind of find meaningful work, even though I had no experience, working in tech or moving or living in California, all of these things. I think, being able to, do really cool stuff. Um, at a pretty cool company, I think is pretty incredible. And so I think there's a myth that you have to know Java and know C++ and know all these things to work in a tech company. It's just not true, right? It's like if you write well, right? I mean, I work with people who were who wrote children's books, who were firefighters and were in the military, right? And so it really kind of runs the gamut in terms of the opportunities that are here. I think what's more important than even your major or even what you choose to do, as far as your career path, is really understanding that most tech companies are mission driven. Um, and so, just to kind of let you all on a secret, I don't think that I'm particularly different than anyone else who applies for a job here. I think what separated me actually was being able to research the company, because most tech companies are created to solve a particular problem, and have a particular mission and vision that they're trying to accomplish. And most of that is actually grounded in purpose, and helping people. And so I was able to actually find a company. Luckily, they found me, but was able to find a company where the mission and vision of the company on a basic level actually align with my own mission and values and vision of what I want to accomplish as a professional as well. And so it was actually a really good marriage. And so I think that's actually what's most important when you're thinking about working in tech. Is not so much your particular skill set, especially if you're going to be graduating from college soon. You have an interest in working in technology. I think more than anything, it's important that you are passionate about what the company is trying to accomplish,
Yeah.
and really being able to articulate that they can't accomplish it without you, right? Without an incredible person of color, without your particular skill set, without your particular talent, and being able to tell that story in a really cool way. But to answer your question, I think to stand out, one, it's important that you have a LinkedIn. And I know it's like shameless plug, but
Yeah, no, that's real.
because I
That's
work
very
here,
real.
I work here. It's so it feels like a shameless plug, but it is important. And one thing that I found, just kind of working in recruiting for a bit when I first started here, is that companies actually aren't spending money to go to campuses as often as they used to, right? So like the old school, like career fair, working with the career center, doing all these things, companies really aren't using it anymore. What they are using though is LinkedIn. And so before they go to a college campus, before we go to a college campus at least, the very first thing we do is we use LinkedIn to find people to invite, right? Because we think based on their experience, based on their skill set, based on what they're passionate about, we can tell all that from their profile and reach out to them because we think they'd be a good fit here. And so the first step is to have a great LinkedIn profile,
Yeah.
so you're found, because otherwise, companies can't find you. And so companies are paying millions of dollars to LinkedIn to be able to tap into great entry level and mid career talent. And if you don't have a strong profile, it's nearly impossible to find you. So I think really being able to, create a strong professional presence online is important. On the flip side of that, however, when companies come to campuses and recruit, I think it can oftentimes feel a little funny. I know when LinkedIn came to Howard, it felt funny. Um, I was like, well, what are you doing here? I don't know anything about LinkedIn. It just felt kind of weird. And it felt like they were there because we were black and we were
Mm,
smart and we should just come to Howard because everyone's black and smart, right? And it was
right.
just like, when I went to the info session, I was just like looking like, what are y'all doing here? Um, and it was funny when I interviewed, it actually planted a seed that wasn't very healthy, because it actually created this, and I've always kind of had it, but created this like cycle of imposter syndrome for me. And kind of define it, it's when you have this fear of being found out, like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, and while you're on the job, you make a mistake, and you kind of have um, this feeling of doom if you mess up. Um, and I had that feeling, and so when I interviewed, they actually flew me to Chicago um, for an in-person interview, and I remember the whole time I was just thinking, I am not going to get a job here. And
Mhm.
the only reason I'm here is because I went to Howard. And even the morning before my in-person interview, I was actually contemplating on whether I should even go or not. And I remember getting dressed that morning, and I was just telling myself, and I had gone to Chicago for the interview, and I remember telling myself like, I'm not gonna get this job. Um, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm only here because they came to my campus and they want black people, and like I happen to be black, and therefore I'm here. And so I was
Mhm.
just going through the motions and getting dressed, just thinking like never been to Chicago before, like never been to the city. I should have skipped the interview entirely.
And
And I
I'm
really
glad you
actually,
didn't skip the interview.
me too, but I really actually had to fight with myself, and so I forced myself to go. But even as I was like walking throughout, the building and meeting people and doing all these things, I was telling myself like, I don't know if I can get a job here. Um, and I remember there was a Hampton. There's only at the time he was one of only two people in the entire company globally that graduated from a historically black college. And he came up to me because he was working in Chicago, and it was right before I actually went to interview. And he came up to me and he said, "Orlando, I want you to know that you deserve to work here. You belong here. If you have any questions, like I'm in your corner. Um, I'm going to support you, and I've heard great things about you." It was like one of those moments where I just felt
Right.
like, wow, like I do deserve
Yeah.
to work here. I do belong here. And
That's incredible. And
you know what
so
I
the
mean?
questions are flowing in. I think you've
Oh
opened up the
man.
floodgates around what,
Oh man.
first of all, and I think to your point, right? If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? And so let's talk about, what tips are you able to share to make recruiter or to make, yeah, to make recruiters be able to find your resume more attractive, or excuse me, your profile more attractive. So what are some tips that folks should be mindful of when they're, after watching this hangout, they're going to go back and update their LinkedIn? What are some
Yeah,
things they should keep in mind?
totally. Well, actually, I created a presentation. So if you just give me one moment,
Okay.
I can actually. You all see my screen? You see it, B?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. So I'm just going to fly through most of this. And I know there's lots of questions, so I want to make sure that um, we can get to all of those. But and my email is actually on this slide. So if you all, for any reason, want to reach out to me, ask me any questions, want a referral for any opportunities here that you see on our website, please reach out to me. Let me know. I'm more than happy to find time to speak with you and help you however I can. But really, just kind of to, to to rush through this as quickly as possible. So, as I mentioned, LinkedIn has about 450 million people. So we have like the largest professional network on the internet, which is really, really cool. And LinkedIn's growing so fast that there's about two new people creating profiles every second. And so there's a lot of growth happening and a lot of opportunity to meet, really great professionals. And so just kind of continuing on here, I think one of your questions was like some tips. And I think first, and I think what's most important to where to start actually is understanding your own personal brand. And an exercise that I did with my cohort that I started with at LinkedIn. So I actually got to LinkedIn through a program called the Business Leadership Program. And we did an exercise where we all broke out into groups and we had to do, we had our team list 5 words that represented our own personal brand, right? And so I think first, before you even create or even edit your LinkedIn profile, I think it's important that you understand your brand, understand what it is that you want to accomplish, who you are, and what you want to become professionally. I mean, these are all the things that really create a cool and really dynamic professional, right? And so you're not just a resume, you're not just someone who has, work experience or, a particular skill set. Like you're a whole person. So I think understanding what that brand is and who you are is extremely important. Really kind of your brand really kind of breaks out into 3 particular buckets, right? And so it's your skill set, your network, and then of course your areas of expertise, right? And so, famous people or even coworkers that you admire, right? You think about, the people that you would go to if you have a question or if you want to find a mentor or if you want a recommendation letter, right? Typically, it breaks out into 3 buckets, right? And so LinkedIn's a really cool tool to use, because it really helps you visualize your professional network, very similar to like a Facebook um, or a Snapchat that helps you visualize your personal network. And so really just taking control of your professional brand, right? And what's really cool is that LinkedIn pays money to Google, so that if you have a strong profile and you Google your name, the first search result will actually be your LinkedIn profile. Um, and most companies actually Google your name when they receive your resume. So it is important that you have a strong professional presence because you want that to be the first thing that they click on, right? And Twitter and Facebook actually play an important role too. Um, because, like I was saying, the whole professional and the personal and the professional, it's important that you show, that, you have personal interests as well. And so really kind of understanding how LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter come together as one, I think is really important. And of course, just being mindful of the things that you post potentially having or doing harm to your professional brand, right? And so the good news for those of you who are kind of starting to think about, maybe getting your first job or, graduating from college soon or really trying to lay out your career path, I think part of it is understanding that you all already have what you need to build a great career, right? You all are smart, you have volunteer experience, you have goals, you have values, you have skills. There's things that you're interested in. And so, really, the value of LinkedIn is that we just help you develop and showcase those, right? So that Google and LinkedIn and Pandora and all these other great companies can find you um, and understand who you are, right? And so, I did want to touch on this, and that is like 89% of people reach out to someone that they know during their job search. And this is because, opportunities actually don't float in the air. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I always thought that. Like I thought I always just had to be at the right time, and then the opportunity would just kind of fall in my lap, right? And so they're not actually just floating in the air; they're actually attached to people. And being able to find out who the right person is to connect with, who the right person is to meet, um, is will lead you to your next job or your next opportunity. And so just keeping that in mind. So just building a great profile. Again, I'm going to just speed through this. But if you don't have a LinkedIn right now, and you would like one, when you create an account, this is what you'll see: an option to edit your profile. So this is your homepage. So in the upper left hand corner, when you go to profile and you click edit, it'll bring you to this page here, and this is your actual profile page, right? So this is what people see when they click on your profile on LinkedIn, and it looks pretty empty, right? There's not much information there, and it tells nothing of who this person is. And so the best profiles are complete and dynamic, right? They have a picture, they have a headline, they have a summary. They're just very dynamic and complete. And so you want to make sure you can add in as much information as you can, because it helps recruiters and companies and even potential mentors understand who you are before they even meet you. And so below your photo and your name, what you'll see is these cards with different sections that highlight your experience, your education, your skill set, maybe even different languages that you speak. And this is our way of making it easy, so that you can add important information and really kind of break out the profile into chunks, so that it's easier to create that professional brand on LinkedIn, right? And so the first part about it is adding a professional photo. It's recommended that it's taken indoors, behind like a clear wall, or like something that doesn't have too much design, um, and one where you're smiling or looking happy, or it really depends on your occupation, I guess, but um, showing yourself as being warm and approachable, because it's easier for people to, unfortunately, people are superficial, and they want to be able to look at you, but it does make it more inviting to reach out to you when you have a friendly face as your profile picture. And it's 14 times more likely to be viewed by a recruiter or by a colleague than one without a picture, right? And feel free to interrupt at any time, if there's any questions that are coming up. I know this is a lot of information very quickly, so I want to make sure that I'm able to address anything that comes up. And so writing an attention grabbing headline is important as well. And the reason for this is because most people think that LinkedIn gathers data from the information through work experience and your summary, and all of that is true. But the main way that we actually recommend jobs for you and opportunities is actually through your headline, right? And so when you have an attention grabbing headline that shows who you are, what you do, what you're passionate about, what your values are, it helps us recommend jobs and opportunities that we think would be a good fit for you. And also, when you're on the app on your phone, there's only actually three things that come up. The first thing is your picture, the second thing is your name, and the third thing is your headline. So writing an attention grabbing headline, and it can be whatever. It can be your position, it can be what you hope to do in the future. It can be, maybe what your interests are, what you like doing in your spare time. Just making sure that it's, relevant to, what you want to become as a professional, right? And these are just, three pretty cool examples. And then writing a compelling summary. This is the part that always scares people. I know it scared me when I was writing my creating my profile for the very first time. But I think just making it short and sweet, and really focusing on your accomplishments, your aspirations, and trying not to include buzzwords. Because really the system doesn't work that way when people are looking candidates. It works in a way where instead people will go on your profile and actually read the whole thing, typically. And so, trying to refrain from buzzwords, or making it too long or too short, I think are really good tips for making sure that people can understand, in a really succinct way, who you are, and what you hope to accomplish. And of course, detailing your education, whether it's community college, whether it's a 4 year degree, whether you got your PhD or your master's degree. I think entering in your school, and relevant dates is important, for a lot of different reasons. One of which I'll touch on a little bit later. But it is certainly important to include, your education, and your background, as far as degrees or things that you've accomplished. Fifth being work experience, right? And it can go as far back as you'd like. Summer jobs count, part-time jobs count, full-time internships count, doesn't matter, right? And so I actually list my very first job on my LinkedIn profile, because I think it's really cool, and it shows, if someone were to visit my profile and look at it, I think it shows that I'm actually proud of the things that I've done, and they haven't all made sense, but they all add to me as a professional, and being able to find the thread that goes between all of your accomplishments professionally, I think is a really cool thing. Um, and so one thing that I always recommend, when I'm helping people create a profile, is looking at the places that they've worked or volunteered, and seeing if they can find that common thread between it. Maybe it's that you love working with children, or maybe it's that you love jobs where you feel like you're giving back, or when you're analyzing data, or when you're doing something. Even if you were working at Pizza Hut or Papa John's or something like that, being able to find the common thread between all of your accomplishments is a really cool way of really showcasing your work experience, and also adding examples of your work. So you can add videos, pictures. You can have URLs to SoundCloud if you make music, or to a particular website if you're a photographer or you make art. And you can actually put these under each one of your the places that you work or the positions that you've held. Um, and so I use this all the time. This is definitely a feature that I utilize, maybe a bit too much, but but it is a cool and dynamic way of representing your professional story. And also adding skills and getting endorsed. And so if there's something that you do particularly well, whether it be public speaking or strategic planning or event planning, your network to endorse you for those skills. And so if I were to look at someone's profile and they were to have 60 endorsements or 80 endorsements for public speaking, I would know even before reaching out to them that 80 people think that they are great at public speaking. And if you endorse other people, they're more likely to endorse you. Almost done, just finishing up here. And so including volunteer experience and causes is really important, especially because, like I mentioned, a lot of tech companies are purpose driven. And so being able to articulate the things that you care about, and causes that you care about, be it children or education, or even some of the things that you do in your spare time, um, really shows that, not only am I professional, but I also care about people. I care about my community, and I do our free time. And like you can see there, your profile is 6 times more likely to be viewed than those without volunteer experience on their profile. And 41% of hiring managers consider volunteer experience equally as valuable as professional experience, um, which is great, especially for those who may be in college, and don't have a lot of internships or don't have a lot of work experience. I know that it can be tough when you don't go to a school in a big metropolitan area, and it can be expensive, because most internships do not pay, and that's horrible. But being able to volunteer, even if you're in school, even if it's every other weekend, that's actually one of the first things that I did when I went to Howard, is I started to mentor, and that really had a huge effect on my life personally. And so being able to showcase the things that you've done in your free time, and the places that you volunteered, really shows that, even if you haven't had any work experience, right, that you've done things that have impacted other people in a positive way. And also organizations, right? So like fraternities, sororities, business fraternities, whatever it is, adding organizations and projects on your profile is incredibly important. And it's actually something that, believe it or not, employers look at when they're looking at talent. So they actually like to see frats, they like to see sororities. So put that on there. And even adding pictures under that is cool as well. And so once you have your profile already created, the first thing, of course, to do is to connect with people that you know. So you can import your email contacts, um, and you can see, based on their email addresses, who already has a profile. And so connecting with other people is cool because the first thing that happens when you connect with another person is that everyone that they're connected to becomes a second degree connection. Meaning that you can reach out to them, you can send them a note, you can schedule time for coffee or maybe a 15-minute phone call if they work at a company that you like to work at in the future, or if they have a particular skill set that you really admire. Um, and so making sure that you first start connecting with people that you know and then utilize them to reach out to people that they know. And one reason why I mentioned why it's important to put your educational experience is if you go on linkedin.com/alumni, this is what will show up based on the information that you put in education. And so the first thing that I did when I moved here was I went on linkedin.com/alumni, and I was able to see every Howard University graduate that lived in the San Francisco Bay Area that had a LinkedIn profile. And I could even narrow it down as far as company, as far as what they do with that particular company. And it's a really cool way of meeting people, especially because the HBCU network is so supportive and people are always willing to help. And so, really utilizing this feature and connecting with people who work at great companies and do cool stuff and lead nonprofits, is a great way of building your network, especially if you're moving or you go to a new place and don't know many people, right? And also using messaging to reach out to people within your network. So if there's someone that you haven't spoken with or that you don't know that well, but they're connected with someone that you know, be proactive and reach out to them because you never know who you'll meet. You never know who will help you get your next opportunity. And I've had, things luckily fall in my lap sometimes. But the reason for that is because I've connected with great people who are willing to help me get them. And so I think being proactive and really researching your connections and where they work and what they've been posting and maybe even if they are interested in running for office one day or doing something, it's really cool to reach out proactively and understand how your network can support you and how you can support them in turn. And of course, jobs. This is something that everyone is looking for and needs. And LinkedIn, I mean, we try and really help people find great jobs. And so there's millions of jobs that you can search on LinkedIn. Um, and they don't all have to be, you know, posted on LinkedIn. So actually, what happens is we have this algorithm where we actually scrape websites to make sure that we can post every single job that's posted on the internet on LinkedIn. And if you have a great profile and you really spend a lot of time with it, there's actually jobs we can apply directly with your profile. You don't even need a resume or a cover letter. And so I actually find that much easier. And so it's a little button that says "in apply." I unfortunately don't have like example of a graphic there, but it says "in apply," and you just click that button, and you can apply directly with your LinkedIn profile. And then network insights. And so this is actually a really cool feature where if there's a job that you are really interested in applying for, LinkedIn will actually show you who posted the job so you can reach out to them if you're interested. And it'll also show you how you stack up against the people that have already applied, right? So it'll show you if they have master's degrees or doctorate degrees or if they live in a particular part of the country. And so giving that insights really helps you understand if you're a good fit and also helps you reach out to someone if you're really interested in taking on the job. And of course, we recommend jobs for you based on the information that you put on your profile. And so you can set up your own job preferences and you can, put in your experience level that describes you best. And so for me, it's definitely entry level because I've only been in the workforce for a short period. But, this just helps us recommend jobs that we think would be a great fit for you um, based on your profile and based on your work experience. And then of course the LinkedIn job app. I'm not sure if you guys have used this, but I definitely used this, especially when I was in college and looking for internships. I think this is actually better than the website, to be completely honest. It's super organized, and they'll send you alerts if there's a job that you want or a particular company that you're interested in. It'll send you alerts every day when the job is posting new opportunities. And so if some of you are interested in working at LinkedIn or working at Facebook or working at a nonprofit within, in the Bay Area or on the East Coast, you can actually put a job search alert within the app and it will update you, um, uh, every single day when that job is live or when the company posts new opportunities, so you can be one of the first people to apply. And so that's actually the end of the presentation. I know I've probably talked most of your ears off, but I just want to kind of take a pause and see if you have any questions or if there's anything else that I can answer or punch
I
base.
mean, that was an amazing presentation, and I don't know what you usually charge folks for that, but you
Oh,
gave the
what? No, it's
community that
free.
for free. So
No, it's
I
free.
appreciate you for that. But we did have a couple of questions, and thank you for a really, really, really thorough overview of the profile. And so Christopher Williams is asking, what are some ways of making sure you don't get discouraged, especially if you have a great profile and don't hear back from companies in weeks or even months?
Yeah, that's so tough. And something that I still wrestle with a bit. Actually, I've had family members um, that have lost jobs in the past, and it's tough. Or having trouble finding a job is really hard, and it's really easy to get discouraged. But one thing that I will say is, you know, um, focus on the things that you have control over, right? And so you don't necessarily have control over whether the company reaches out to you, and that says nothing about you as a person,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's just not a right fit, right? And maybe you wouldn't be happy working there. But I think part of not being discouraged is really making sure that you have a strong network that can help you find opportunities and that can introduce you to the right people. Um, and so, I know that's not very helpful. And of course, I don't have much experience in that because I have been discouraged and I haven't really known what to do. But I think part of it is just surrounding yourself with really great people and being proactive and proactively searching and proactively using LinkedIn and other resources to meet people who can get you your next opportunity, because maybe sending your resume in isn't the best way, right? Maybe you have an amazing personality and people just need to meet you. So if you're in school, you go to job fairs, make sure you stay up to date. If there's an info session that you're really interested in attending, make sure you go. Make sure you work with your career centers. And if you're already employed, make sure that you're connecting with people who work at companies, or you are going to job fairs and doing things so that you can build your network and also be there at the right time to get your opportunity. But
Oh,
wish you best of luck. Stay
yeah.
encouraged.
Cool, right on. Thank you for that. And another question we had is, can you share an example of things not to include in your profile?
Yeah, great question. um hmm I would say not to include the things that don't matter. And I know that's very broad, but what I mean by that is, um, when you think about your brand and you think about who you are and who you want to become, right? If a piece of information that's not particularly relevant, like the fact that, um, I don't know, you have two chihuahuas and a German Shepherd, or I don't know, like you love eating particular food, or if it's not something that you feel adds to you as a person and adds to where you see yourself going, I would say not to include it, right? So some people actually aren't comfortable putting in their first few jobs on their LinkedIn profile. That's totally fine because they don't feel like it adds to who they are or where they see themselves going. And so before you post anything, or before you put anything on your profile, just ask yourself, like, is this something that I feel adds to me? Whether I'm proud of it or not, right? Like, if I'm okay telling the story of how I did poorly in high school, I feel like that adds to me as a professional. And so I don't put it on LinkedIn, but I happily talk about it.
Yeah.
So everything doesn't have to be squeaky clean perfect, because none of us are. But I think just the litmus test is just asking yourself, like, is this something that's relevant to me as a person, and as a professional? And if not, then I would say not to include it.
Cool. Another question that we have is, earlier you spoke to your imposter syndrome that you were kind of going through in the initial interview process, and wondering how you were able to overcome that imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And if it shows up today, what are some ways that you disrupt that
Yeah,
imposter syndrome for yourself?
great question. I think Howard was instrumental in me being able to fight that imposter syndrome. But the first thing that I did actually, before I came to LinkedIn, was, so my start date, the day that I started, was July 13th. And I remember when I got my offer to work here, It was in November. It was right around Thanksgiving, and I was dreading that entire period. I was just dreading July 13th because I knew that day would come, and I knew I would have to move away, and I was so terrified. And so instead of kind of succumbing to that fear, what I did was actually use LinkedIn, and I found people of color. I found people that worked in diversity. I found people that I felt were doing cool things at the company, and I reached out to them. I sent them messages, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm starting at LinkedIn July 13th, and I'm terrified, and I want to talk to you for 5 minutes, um, just to learn more about what you do." And what I was doing was I wasn't just like understanding what they did. I was building a network of people around me at the company that I felt would support me, right? Would make me feel affirmed here, would be in my corner and champion me and become future mentors and, become future sponsors. And so that's what I did. Um, and yes, imposter syndrome does show up sometimes. I'm in sales now and I have a quota. And so sometimes I can look at the dashboard because you can see how many calls, how many, what you're doing every day and everyone can see it. And there's some days where I'm really slacking and I look at the dashboard and I'm just like, oh man, I'm, you know, not good. I'm not doing well today. Like, what if my manager comes up to me and it's like, Orlando, see, like, I knew you weren't as smart as everyone said you were. And, I knew you weren't as accomplished as like your LinkedIn profile looks and all these things.
Mm,
Um, you know, Part of combating that is just proactively telling yourself, I belong here. And what helps is having a network of people at the company who tell you the same thing and tell you on your worst day that you're good enough and that you're smart and that, people admire you because it's so easy to get discouraged and it's so easy to feel alone. And so before you get to a company, whether it's in technology or not, right, making sure that you have one or four or 10 people that you connect with, that will defend you and make you feel affirmed.
right. Awesome. Well, those are all the questions that we have for tonight. And I'm just curious, for yourself, perhaps not long term, but next 5 years, what do you see as the next move for yourself professionally?
Oh man, I'm not sure. I think for me, I just feel like everything happens for a reason, and I
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I'm prepared for when like the next opportunity comes. But as far as like job or position, like I would love to be a champion of a company or an organization or a congressman or someone that I felt was doing something incredible. Um, I would love to be, like work with communities and use technology as a way to create opportunities and create jobs. And I would love to work with nonprofits and work with community leaders and all these things. So that's definitely where I would hope to see myself in 5 years. Being able to use technology and use resources as a means of creating opportunity for disadvantaged people.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you so much for spending your Sunday with us, but also giving us a really, really thorough overview of how to maximize our LinkedIn. And so I hope everyone who's watching this today follow up on Orlando's offer to connect, right? Like not only to connect on LinkedIn, but follow up if you have additional questions. Oops, I lied. One more question from Christopher.
Okay.
Is it good to include your social media profiles to your LinkedIn? And that's from Christopher.
I think so. Um,
Yeah.
I include my Twitter on LinkedIn, even though I don't use Twitter, but I think it's just cool. But yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. Just be aware that people will click on it and they'll look
Mhm.
through old pictures. And so if someone's saying something or you've said something that you feel that would hurt your professional brand and ultimately hurt opportunities that come your way, I would say not to include it. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's perfectly fine.
Cool.
It's a cool way of showing your personal brand.
And being intentional, making sure that it's your message is consistent across the platforms. And that's something I'm working on right now because sometimes I can rant on Facebook and rant on Twitter, but I'm trying to be more consistent across all social media platforms.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to wrap up. Thank you again for your time. Thank you again for such an incredible presentation. Like folks on Twitter and texting me like this was incredible. So I appreciate you. And hopefully you wake up tomorrow with your inbox bombarded from HBCU for startup folks. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for tuning in and asking questions and engaging with us. And seeing nothing further, we will close. Have a good night. Peace, y'all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.